Because of the challenges with the Fair Housing Act, and that because drug and alcohol addiction, and they are considered a protected class, I think a lot of times maybe legal staff was afraid, and I think what they could have done is do a better job with setbacks and spacing between the houses. But also our land use code and our zoning didn't match. So what happened was, when these older homes, and they have 4 and 5 bedrooms, it didn't match, where we had a limit on unrelated persons in a home. Now we're four in a single family neighborhood. So you could have, and that's the problem, you could have like 12 young men living in these homes, sometimes 16. So it snowballed. All of a sudden people weren't asleep at the switch, so to speak. And I think if they had done a better job of seeing what could have been done and taking advantage of legally what they were entitled to do, and they were entitled to use zoning laws, and that it wasn't discriminatory. And but I think what Representative Campbell's bill was then allow them to now set standards for inside the homes, and I think you needed both. And I think this problem was so long in coming. I've also used the analogy, it's like this battleship. It's been going down this wrong direction, and it's going to take a while to turn the battleship around.
Could you talk about your experiences learning about these sober living homes?
Sure, it has been a learning experience. I first started it just by trying to find out information, because it really was amazing. The first time the bill started, it was last year, so it'd be 2015, and I think the City of Prescott's legal staff really kind of took the forefront on that, because legislative staff down in Phoenix, they didn't know the problem, so they kind of really like, what would you like us to write? And they took charge on that. And so legislative staff, because they didn't know the problem, I think, I don't want to say were hamstrung, but they were kind of guided, and I think perhaps that's why the bill failed, because it kind of had this maybe shut them down kind of perspective to it, as opposed to the second year when it was, let's raise the standard of care, and the political of appealing to both sides of the aisle. But my perspective was, as I started to learn about the industry, because there was, again, with no business license in Prescott, nobody knew how many homes there were, how they operated, what was going on inside the home. So for me, it was a matter of sitting down with the owners of the homes, whether they're CEOs or CFOs, and then from that point, I started to get in touch with the staff, and in a way gain their trust. And then other times I literally would just ride around with my mountain bike, turn my baseball hat on backwards, and just start talking to the kids, because they clearly, you would know who they were walking on the streets, and just say hey, and say, can you tell me about what's going on? And a lot of them were willing to talk about what they did during the day, and what house they belonged to, and what their day was like, and that's how I gathered some information that way too.
What spurred you into action? What spurred you into riding your bike around and talking to these people?
I guess because when I did management in the private sector, I think the best way you learn is when you're at the bottom level. Because I think a manager, when you stay removed from things, you don't really know. And I think you can learn a lot from the people who are low level and doing the job. And for me, I think I learned the most when I learned about their experiences in the homes. And I would ask them questions, so what about this? And even from their answers, I think these kids didn't even know, to me, how poor their quality of care was. That they thought it was okay to just be let out of the house, to me, like a dog or a cat, at 9 in the morning and told to be search for a job, and you can come back in at 3 in the afternoon. And I literally would see them walking together with 4 and 5 kids. And that's what they were doing. They had to put in a certain amount of applications during the day. And I thought that was terrific. I was just thinking, what are you learning? What coping skills are you learning? Knowing what I knew about them and as far as how maybe the other adults in their life had let them down, that they weren't learning any other skills here, and that they, to me, they were being pimped out by the industry. And I think that was horrific.
Were there any questions that you asked that got an answer that you weren't quite expecting or that shocked you?
I think the shocking part was the sadness of it, and the failure rate. I had no idea. I didn't have the experience Representative Campbell had. I don't live near him. I'm not an addict. I don't own a home. I was so shocked about, well, like asking what home you're from, and then they would say, well, I was here at this home and this one and this one, and now I'm here. And so many of them were here in this city for so long, and they literally would just bounce from home to home to home. And that was so sad to me. And it was like no one was really, I wrote an article in the paper about giving them a real shot at sobriety, and I just thinking the whole system was letting them down. Whether it started from their own family letting them down, and now here this industry was letting them down. I mean, it was lucrative. It was a way for this industry, because there was absolutely no regulation. These people were making money hand over fist, and these kids were just a byproduct of it. And I just saw so few people. The industry itself really gave a hoot about these kids. They were just money. And that's what was really horrific to me. And then the worst of it all is the biggest fallout were my neighbors, because that's where that 300 people, and it was like pitchforks. I mean, I felt them that they were going to leave City Hall and just start burning things. I mean, that's how horrific it was that night. And you have to understand, from their perspective, they had every single right to feel that way. They were let down by their elected officials for well over a decade. And for most people, the home is the biggest investment they make, and they are being let down. Their peace was stolen from them. And I think that's the least you can ask for your elected officials, just that they should have peace.
And how do you foresee the problem changing? And now that the city officials are involved, how do you see kind of mending the situation?
Well, I think Representative Campbell and Mayor Harry Oberg have made wonderful strides of reaching out to the industry, and I think that's never done before, because I truly believe that the way this is really going to correct itself is the industry itself is the one to step up to the plate. I was an inner city police officer, and I know for sure, unless people themselves start to take responsibility for things, there's no way the government can come in and correct everything. In fact, they usually make a horrific mess of everything. So I believe once the industry itself can say, yeah, we aren't doing a good job, and that's what is happening here in Prescott. The industry has said that. There's many of them that they call me up all the time, and they're saying this is what's going on, or and I said, good, let's sit down, and we want to help. And so I am hopeful that once these ordinances pass, and again, there are very, very few providers here that I trust, but there I believe is enough to have that spark of the flame, that they can, it starts with peer pressure, that they can put the pressure on the other providers that, look, we can all clean this up, and that they can come and help code enforcement, and they can kind of also be a watchdog in this and say this isn't right. And so I think it's the beginning, and that's why I feel very hopeful about all this.
Okay. Anything?
Do you know just kind of the homes that you've had to deal with? Would it be possible for us to get any sort of list of kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of your range of experience of good homes that you've dealt with, or particularly egregious ones?
I can point you in the right direction.
Okay. Any help would be great.
And then,
But just so you know, they're all wonderful to them.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
They're all doing a fabulous job.
no ugly babies.
No,
Right.
and they're all above average.
Right.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, well, I would like to add, with NAR, this is Northern Arizona Recovery Association, and you had mentioned about it, has there been an olive branch, and there's, because of this boiling pot, again, the industry has tried. It's a group that, it was started out for philanthropic reasons. They do help out in many aspects of the city. Easter egg hunt. This group literally stuffed thousands of Easter eggs for the kids when they have this at the square. And I think it's a start. And they do a lot of other things where, for organizations, you want things moved, honest to God, people call them up. These kids come and they'll help you. I mean, they've come here at Representative Campbell's house and helped them out here. So they are willing to do that. And I think this is good because, you know, if they can, this is the start to me of sobriety, if they can get outside themselves, because that's what they do. They, you know, anything stressful, they reach for their addiction, whatever their drug of choice is. So I think this is a good thing that NAR's done, is to have these kids start to volunteer. The problem is there are so many people, because this has been allowed to fester for so long, that they're going to really have to go and be here for a while to show, look, we're not all bad, and look, give us a chance. And you know, and it is the kids today, but look, they're inked up from here all the way down, and